Kagurabachi chapter 52 is out, and unfortunately there's no Samura, but we do get to see Chihiro again. The chapter begins with a flashback between Chihiro and Hiyuki, and they're talking about how the Hishaku has changed significantly over the past 4 years, which is how long it's been around in total. Hiyuki says that at the beginning of the Hishaku's existence, they were an incredibly aggressive and violent organization, hence why they attacked the creator of the enchanted blades and killed him and then stole all the other blades. But as soon as the Kamunabi took action, the Hishaku kind of completely disappeared until just now in the story. And because the Hishaku have been completely incognito, it's been really hard to figure anything out about them, so that's why they're constantly one step ahead. However, the rest of the chapter is the fight between Chihiro and this member of the Hishaku, and it is a really good fight. It's not as much as a fight as it is a conversation between this mystery Hishaku warrior and Chihiro. Basically, this guy starts relating himself to Chihiro, saying that, hey, I've been fighting since I was a child too. I've known bloodshed and death since before I was 18, and we're both 18, so we're the same. It's the classic I am you, you are me, villain-hero dynamic. We learn that this guy has been unaliving people since he was 3 years old, and that it's been etched in his bones ever since. And he basically says, we could be friends, we are the same, we have undergone the same experiences, and obviously Chihiro hates this because this dude works with the people who ruined his life, so I don't know what this guy was expecting to happen through that. So Chihiro lunges at him! Naturally, I would have too. He says, don't you dare equate me with you and your heinous deeds, and I mean, that's facts. And we learn the guy's name. The warrior that works for the Hishaku's name is Hirohiko. And after he says that, he disappears into a mist of origami paper flying everywhere. So now we know that teleportation, or some variant of that, is in his arsenal of sorcery powers. Chihiro is obviously completely confused as to where he went, and then we see him at this theater. So he's clearly got something planned, and he goes inside the theater and sits down and starts watching the show. He strikes up a conversation with the guy next to him. This is a guy he doesn't know, and then he just spoils the entire play for the dude. Like, he's like, oh, this is how it ends. This is what happens. And then the guy notices that the dude is pouring blood out of his stomach, and he's like, yo, dude, are you okay? You're bleeding a little bit. And Hirohiko says, oh yeah, it was a dude with an enchanted blade, so be careful because he's coming. Sure enough, Chihiro spawns in right above the theater with the other Hishaku members fighting him in midair, and there's all these origami papers everywhere. So, yes, Hirohiku's ability somehow involves teleportation through origami paper. Then we get a brief narration from Hirohiko about the Datinseki and how it carried the Hishaku's fight against the Kokugoku base. He says that they could have taken the base much easier if they had hired better people, because even though the Datinseki does make fighters significantly stronger, if a fighter isn't that strong to begin with, the Datinseki can only do so much. It's the idea that if you take steroids but don't work out, you will get a little bit stronger, but you can only really maximize the steroids capability if you are constantly working out. So, weak warriors use the Datinseki, they get a little bit better, but not as good as they could be. Then Chihiro and the other Hishaku members crash onto the roof, and looks like they bust open the ceiling. Hirohiko says that some of the sorcerers they hired are helpful, but none of them are that crazy good. Chihiro now realizes that the origami papers can be controlled remotely from Hirohiko, which makes them a very annoying weapon. He says that they're not lethal, but they're very precise, which makes it harder for him to fight, and it also helps the opponents. One of the Hishaku members is flying above Chihiro and is about to crash land right beneath him, but Chihiro is confused with all of the papers around him and he's looking around. Meanwhile, in the play that's going on beneath Chihiro, the ultimate challenger awaits, and then Hirohiko says, here comes the bad guy, this is the good part. And sure enough, Chihiro and all of the Hishaku crash land into the theater, making Chihiro the bad guy in Hirohiko's eyes. And if Chihiro's the bad guy in Hirohiko's eyes, then Chihiro is doing a good job, because he's got Enten lodged into the neck of this Hishaku member. Also, it's worth noting that I keep saying Hishaku member when these guys aren't technically part of the Hishaku, but they do work for the Hishaku, so just keep that in mind. Chihiro crash lands on the stage with this just incredible panel. This series has banger panel after banger panel, so I'm going to get out of the way so you can see it in its full glory. It's so good. Hirohiko also brings up how the Datinseki is only really helpful for a short amount of time. So you get really, really strong, but only for a little bit. And that's why Chihiro was able to win eventually, because those guys were enhanced by the Datinseki, but that eventually ran out, and Chihiro's Enten just overpowers them. Those sorcerers were pretty unexperienced, like Hirohiko has been bringing up, and Chihiro comes out of the battle unscathed, which Hirohiko picks up on, but then he's like, well, you've been using an enchanted blade for an incredibly long amount of time, so it makes sense that you'd be so experienced. At this point, all the other members in the theater run out of the building because they are realizing what's going on and that it's not a part of the show, which, I feel like they should have figured out a little bit earlier, but oh well. And Hirohiko says, to the average person, you're a monster. And then he says, well, whose fault is that? It is the Hishaku's fault that Chihiro is the way that he is because they took everything from him. Hirohiko says, I am the only one who understands you. And then Chihiro just says, cut the BS. So this line here from Hirohiko makes me think a few things. One, it could just be affirming the fact that, yeah, he's been fighting and unaliving people since he was a little child, so he can relate with Chihiro on that level. But it also could relate to something different. What I think it could also mean is that the Hishaku took something from Hirohiko in his childhood the same way they did to Chihiro. And because of that loss, Hirohiko was convinced to join the Hishaku to gain strength. Which could mean that Hirohiko was some kind of fallen hero or some potentially good person that was just swayed by the forces of darkness. Chapter 53 comes out next Sunday. There's not going to be a break, which is great, and I can't wait to see it because I'm assuming it's going to be the continuing fight between Hirohiko and Chihiro, and Hirohiko is becoming a more and more interesting character as we find out more about him. So let me know what y'all thought about this chapter down below in the comments. Let me know what kinds of things you think will happen next. And thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit the follow button if you watched all the way to the end. That's incredible. This is a 6-minute video and it's on TikTok. So thank you so much for watching. You're amazing.